When did a dangerous secret finally catch up with you? I never thought one locked drawer in my father's office would change the course of my life. For years, it was just there, mahogany, polished to a dull shine, with a brass keyhole no one dared to touch. My father said it contained business documents. My mother never questioned him. My brother and I grew up in that house, believing curiosity was dangerous. That silence kept the peace. But silence has its limits. And mine snapped the night of my 17th birthday. The party ended early. Friends had barely finished cake before Dad sent them home, saying he had an early shift. My brother, Caleb, retreated to his room with headphones, leaving me alone in the kitchen with Mum's stiff smile. She washed dishes in silence, eyes flicking toward the office door at the end of the hall. I followed her gaze, and for the first time I saw fear, not annoyance, not exhaustion, but raw fear. That night, when the house settled into creaks and whispers, I crept down the hall. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might wake everyone. The office door was unlocked. That in itself was unusual. Dad guarded it like a vault. Inside, the air smelled of leather, old paper, and something metallic, faint but sharp. The drawer was locked, of course. But Dad had never been good at hiding keys. I'd seen him tuck one behind the framed photo of his old police academy class. My hands shook as I pulled it free. The lock clicked open louder than I expected. My breath caught as I slid the drawer open, expecting bank papers or tax files. Instead, I found photos. Dozens of them, stacked in envelopes. Different women caught off guard, at grocery stores, walking home, sitting in cars. Some looked terrified, others unaware. My stomach twisted when I saw one face I recognized. Mrs. Patterson, our neighbor who'd moved away suddenly last year. Beneath the photos were cassette tapes, each labeled with dates and times. I slipped one into Dad's old player on the desk. The static gave way to voices, pleading, crying, his voice cutting through, calm, coaxing, almost gentle. My body went cold. I slammed the stop button and nearly dropped the tape. A shadow moved in the doorway. "What are you doing in here?" Dad's voice. Low, dangerous. I couldn't breathe. The cassette was still in the player. He stepped closer, his silhouette filling the frame, the hall light casting him half in shadow. I stammered, I was looking for a pen." His eyes flicked to the drawer, wide open, the envelope spilling onto the desk. His jaw tightened. He shut the door behind him. "No one," he said, voice like gravel, "comes in here without permission." The air between us thickened. His hand rested casually on the desk, inches from the tape recorder. "What did you hear?" I shook my head, my throat dry. "Nothing. I swear." For a moment, silence stretched so long I thought he might believe me. Then he smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "You're old enough now," he murmured. "Old enough to understand what loyalty really means." I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. He leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear. "You tell anyone about this," he whispered, "and you won't just lose me. You'll lose your mother, Caleb, everything." The weight of his hand pressed onto my shoulder, gentle, almost affectionate, but it pinned me like iron. Then he let go, closed the drawer with deliberate calm, and locked it. He slipped the key into his pocket, gave me one last unreadable look, and left the office without another word. I stood frozen for minutes after, my pulse thundering in my ears. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The images burned into my mind. The voices on the tape replayed over and over. And his warning, his promise echoed louder than both. But secrets rot when buried. And this one was already clawing its way to the surface. The next morning, Mrs. Patterson's name appeared in the news. Her body had been found in a shallow grave, 30 miles out of town. And I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that the drawer in my father's office held more than just secrets. It held the truth about a killer, and he lived in my house. When the news anchor said her name, My fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. Caleb barely looked up from his phone. Mom's face went pale, her eyes darting to Dad. He didn't flinch. He just kept cutting into his eggs, chewing with calm deliberation, as if they were talking about road closures instead of a murdered neighbor. "They're saying foul play suspected," Mom whispered. Dad swallowed, set down his fork, and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "The world's dangerous." She should have been more careful. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. Not sympathy. Not shock, just irritation. Like she'd inconvenienced him by ending up in the news. My chest tightened as I glanced at Caleb, wondering if he heard it too. But my brother was oblivious, laughing at a meme on his screen. I wanted to scream. Tell them about the drawer, the photos, the tapes. But Dad's warning replayed in my mind like a curse. Loyalty, or lose everything. That day at school, I couldn't focus. Every shadow seemed heavier. Every laugh around me felt wrong. I carried the weight of what I knew like a stone pressing against my ribs. By last period, my hands wouldn't stop trembling. When the teacher called on me, I couldn't even remember what subject we were in. After class, my friend Lena pulled me aside. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." The words slipped out before I could stop them. "What if someone you love wasn't who you thought?" She frowned, her voice softening. "Like cheating? Lying? Worse," I whispered. "Like dangerous worse." Her eyes searched mine, waiting for me to explain, but I couldn't. If I said it aloud, it would become real. And Dad's threat, it wasn't just paranoia. I'd seen the evidence. He wasn't bluffing. "Forget it," I muttered. "I just haven't slept." But Lena didn't look convinced. When I got home, Dad's patrol car was already in the driveway. He was early. The office door was ajar, light spilling out into the hall. My pulse spiked. I crept closer, every step careful, my ears straining. Inside, Dad sat at the desk, the drawer open, cassette tape spread out like a deck of cards. His back was to me, shoulders hunched. He was listening. The voice on the tape wasn't pleading this time. It was his. Cold. Sharp. "Tell me who else knows. Tell me now." The other voice, a man, choked, coughed, begged. Then a sickening thud. Silence. I slapped my hand over my mouth to keep from gasping. My vision tunneled, spots dancing at the edges. Dad reached forward and rewound the tape, listening again as if memorizing the cadence of his own cruelty. The floor creaked under my foot. His head snapped up. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd caught me. But he only rubbed his temples and muttered something I couldn't hear. I backed away, slow and silent, until I was safe in my room with the door locked. My whole body shook, adrenaline crushing through me in waves. He wasn't just watching people. He wasn't just keeping trophies. He was involved. Directly. That night, I couldn't eat. Mom asked if I felt sick. Caleb teased me about dieting. Dad just stared. Not long. Just enough to make me feel like he knew. Later, when the house was asleep, I pulled out my phone and searched Anonymous Tips Police. But the irony hit me like a punch. Who would I call? Dad was the police. He'd see it before anyone else. I deleted the search, but I couldn't keep the secret forever. The drawer, the photos, the tapes. They were screaming at me from the shadows of that office. And then something happened that made silence impossible. 3 nights later, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside my window, slow, crunching against the gravel. I froze, my heart pounding. The curtain shifted faintly in the breeze from the cracked window. I lay there, holding my breath. Then I heard it, a whisper. My name. I bolted upright, yanking the curtain aside. And there, in the moonlight, was Dad. He was standing in the yard, his face tilted up toward me. That same unreadable smile spread across his lips. "Go back to sleep," he said softly. And then he walked back into the house as if nothing had happened. I didn't sleep at all. I stayed awake until dawn, staring at my door, waiting for the knob to turn. It never did. but every creak of the old house felt like a warning. Every shadow under the crack of the door like a threat. When the sun finally came up, I felt like I'd aged years in one night. My hands shook as I tied my shoes for school. Mum called from the kitchen that breakfast was ready, her voice chipper but strained, like she was reading from a script. At the table, Dad poured coffee, humming softly under his breath, a normal morning for him. Except his eyes lingered on me too long, like he was watching for cracks in a mask. "You look tired," he said. "I didn't sleep well. Dreams?" His tone was casual, but his smile wasn't. I shrugged, stabbing at my eggs. "Something like that." His gaze sharpened for a split second, then softened again. "Dreams can tell us a lot about who we are." He sipped his coffee slowly, savoring the moment. "And about what we're afraid of." I dropped my fork. The clatter made Caleb snicker, oblivious as always. That day at school, Lena cornered me again. She grabbed my arm by the lockers, pulling me aside before I could escape. "You're scaring me," she said bluntly. "I know something's wrong. I've known you since we were 5. You can't hide it from me." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "My dad's not who you think he is." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" I hesitated. This was the moment. If I told her, there was no taking it back. Dad's warning rang in my head. "You'll lose everything. Forget it," I muttered. My voice cracked. "Please, just forget I said anything." But she didn't. I could see it in her face. She wasn't going to let this go. When I got home that afternoon, the office door was open again. My curiosity pulled me toward it like a magnet, even though every instinct screamed at me to stay away. This time, something was different. The drawer was locked, but one of the tapes sat on the desk, unlabeled. I glanced down the hall. No footsteps. No voices. With trembling fingers, I slid the tape into the recorder and hit play. The voice on the recording wasn't a stranger's this time. It was Mom's. She was crying, begging, her words broken. "Please, I didn't tell anyone, I swear." And then his voice, calm, too calm. "You know the rules. Secrets rot families. You want to keep this one buried, don't you?" The sound of something sharp scraping. Her sobs muffled. A door slamming. My stomach turned. I yanked the tape out, shoving it back onto the desk like it burned my hands. When I turned around, Dad was standing in the doorway, looking for something. My mouth went dry. He stepped inside, closed the door, and leaned against it. "You're too curious for your own good." "That's dangerous." I stammered. I was just what?" His voice was quiet, but each word cut deep. "Testing me? Seeing how much you can get away with?" I shook my head furiously. "No. I swear." I didn't hear anything. He studied me, his eyes cold, calculating. Then he smiled again. That same smile that made my skin crawl. "You're my blood, my own. That means you understand loyalty better than anyone." He reached into his pocket and dangled the brass key in front of me. "You want to know everything so badly." "Go ahead. Open the drawer." I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs. I don't want to," I whispered. "Yes, you do." He tossed the key onto the desk. The metal clink echoed like a gunshot. "But understand this, once you open it, there's no going back. And once you know, you belong to it." "To me." He brushed past me, leaving the office door wide open, his footsteps fading down the hall. The key glinted on the desk. I didn't touch it. Not yet, but the temptation grew heavier every second, like gravity itself was pulling me toward that drawer. That night, I heard Mom and Dad arguing in hushed tones. Through the thin walls, I caught fragments. "She's not ready." Mum's voice trembling. "She'll learn, like you did." Dad's voice steady, cold. "Please, not her too." Silence. Then the sound of a slap. I buried my head under the pillow, but the tears came anyway, because I finally understood something that terrified me more than anything else. Mom wasn't just afraid of him. She was trapped in the same secret. And soon, he planned to drag me into it too. I couldn't look at Mum the same after that night. Every bruise I noticed on her arms, every flinch when Dad touched her shoulder, screamed louder than the news anchor's voice announcing another missing woman. But it wasn't just fear in her eyes anymore. It was resignation. Like she'd already made her choice years ago, and there was no way out. At dinner, Dad talked about the precinct, about the idiots who couldn't close cases, about lazy rookies who wouldn't last a day in the field. Mom nodded along. Caleb shoveled food into his mouth, completely detached. And I sat there, every bite of food turning to ash in my throat, wondering how no one else could see the monster across from us. When the plates were cleared, Dad said, "After homework, come to the office. Both of you." His tone was light, almost cheerful. But something in his eyes said it wasn't optional. My stomach dropped. Caleb groaned. "Why?" "I've got practice tomorrow." Dad's gaze snapped to him. "Because I said so." The air turned heavy. Caleb muttered something under his breath, but he didn't argue again. Later, we gathered in the office. Dad closed the door and locked it this time. He sat behind the desk, folding his hands like a judge. The brass key to the drawer gleamed in front of him. He looked at us one by one, his eyes lingering on me just a second longer. "Every family has rules. Ours are simple: loyalty, silence, protection. Do you understand?" Caleb rolled his eyes. "Yeah, whatever." "Not whatever," Dad snapped. "Everything." The room fell quiet. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and uneven. Dad leaned forward. "Sometimes, the world asks us to do difficult things. Ugly things. But those things keep us safe. Keep this family intact. That's all that matters." My skin crawled. I wanted to scream at Caleb, at Mom, at anyone to acknowledge what this really was. But Caleb was staring at his shoes, and Mom stood in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, silent. Dad picked up the key and twirled it between his fingers. "One day you'll both inherit more than my name. You'll inherit responsibility, burdens, secrets." His eyes flicked to me. "You're ready to start learning." Caleb laughed nervously. "She's barely 17. 17 is old enough to see the world as it is," Dad said. His gaze pinned me. "Isn't it?" I couldn't answer. My throat was dry, my tongue glued to the roof of my mouth. He slid the drawer open and pulled out a new envelope. He tossed it onto the desk. The photos inside spilled across the wood. This time, they weren't strangers. It was Lena, my best friend, walking home from school, eating lunch in the cafeteria, sitting on her porch with her dog. My breath hitched. Dad smiled faintly. "You're close to her, aren't you?" I nodded, unable to speak. "Good. That makes this easier." He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "If you can keep this secret, if you can prove your loyalty, then I know you're ready." "What the hell is this?" Caleb muttered, finally lifting his head. Dad's smile vanished. "Watch your mouth." But Caleb's voice grew louder. "Why do you have these? What the hell are you doing?" I could see it in Dad's face, that flicker of danger, the mask cracking. "Because," he said softly, almost tenderly, "she matters to your sister. And loyalty isn't real until it's tested." My heart pounded. My legs wanted to run, but I was rooted to the spot. "Leave her alone," I whispered. Dad tilted his head. "Then show me. Show me you can be trusted. Or maybe Caleb wants to volunteer instead." My brother's eyes widened. "What? No, this is insane." Dad slammed his fist onto the desk. The photos fluttered. "Nothing about this is insane. This is survival. The world doesn't forgive weakness." His voice dropped lower. "And weakness gets people killed." The silence stretched, suffocating. Then he leaned back again, calm once more, as if nothing had happened. He carefully gathered the photos, slid them back into the envelope, and locked the drawer. "You'll think about it," he said. Not a request, a command. And just like that, the meeting was over. But that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. If I didn't do something soon, Lena would be next. I couldn't face Lena the next morning. When she caught up to me in the hall, chattering about some stupid inside joke, all I could see were those photographs scattered across Dad's desk, her smile frozen in time, caught in his lens, his game piece. His test. I texted you last night, she said, nudging my arm. You didn't answer. I was busy, I mumbled, her brow furrowed. Busy, or avoiding me? I forced a smile, but it cracked almost immediately. I'll explain later, but I didn't. I couldn't. All day, the envelope burned in my memory. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his words. Loyalty isn't real until it's tested. By the time I walked home, the sun was dipping low, shadows stretching across the yard like claws. Dad's patrol car was gone. Relief washed through me, but only for a moment. Mum was in the kitchen, staring out the window, her hands trembling around a coffee cup. She didn't look at me when she spoke. You shouldn't antagonize him. My stomach turned. You knew. You knew about Lena. Her lips pressed tight. It's better to go along than to resist. Believe me. I stepped closer, my voice rising. You're letting him. Stop. Her tone cracked like a whip. Do you think I don't know who I married? What he's capable of? Her eyes finally met mine, wide and wet with unshed tears. I'm keeping you alive. Both of you. That's all I can do. I wanted to hate her, but there was something in her face broken, cornered, that froze me. That night, I heard Dad come home. Heard the clink of keys, the heavy steps, the office door closing. I couldn't take it anymore. I slipped from bed, moving silently down the hall, and crouched outside his office. The door wasn't locked this time, just cracked. I could see him at the desk. Photos spread out again, not just Lena now. Other girls. Faces I half recognized from school, the store, the neighborhood. He picked one up, studied it, then set it aside. He was cataloging them, choosing. I pressed my back to the wall, forcing my breath slow, steady. But the wood groaned under my weight. His head snapped up. I bolted down the hall, heart in my throat, and slammed my bedroom door behind me. I climbed into bed, pulling the blanket over me, squeezing my eyes shut as his footsteps approached. The knob rattled, then silence. I lay there, shaking, until exhaustion finally dragged me under. The next morning, I woke to find something on my desk. A photo. It was me, taken through my bedroom window as I slept. On the back, in neat block letters, were 2 words. Your turn. My legs gave out. I slid to the floor, clutching the photo, my pulse roaring in my ears. He knew. He'd always known. And now, I wasn't just his daughter. I was his next test. I stared at that photo for what felt like hours, my chest tight, my throat refusing to swallow. My own face stared back at me, peaceful, oblivious, while somewhere outside that window, he'd been watching, framing the shot, waiting. The floor creaked in the hallway. I shoved the picture under my mattress just as the door cracked open. Dad's voice. Up already? Yeah, I croaked. He leaned against the frame, his smile calm, almost fatherly. You and we understand each other, don't we? I nodded slowly, afraid to do anything else. Good. He stepped inside, closer than I wanted. Then you know what comes next. You don't run from it. You accept it. He left before I could breathe again. All day my mind spun. Did he mean Lena? Me? Someone else? Every second of silence felt like a countdown. That night, I tried to warn Lena. I typed a text 12 times, deleted it, rewrote it. Finally, I sent, "Don't walk home alone. Promise me." She sent back laughing emojis. What is this? A horror movie? I didn't reply. I couldn't explain, but the pit in my stomach only grew. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of the front door closing. The clock read 2:14 a.m. I crept to the window and saw his silhouette in the driveway, loading something into the trunk of his car. A shovel, a duffel bag. My body moved before my brain caught up. I slipped into jeans, grabbed my phone, and crept out the back door. His engine rumbled to life, tail lights bleeding red across the gravel. I followed on foot, keeping to the shadows until he turned down the main road. Then I sprinted back to my bike, pedaling as fast as I could. The night air cut into my lungs, my thighs burning with every push. I stayed just far enough back to keep him in sight, the dark road stretching endless under the moonlight. Finally, he turned onto an old service road near the quarry. I left my bike hidden in the trees and crept closer, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out the cicadas. His headlights cut through the brush, illuminating a patch of dirt. He got out, shovel in hand, and started digging, methodical, focused. I crouched behind a tree, every nerve screaming. A duffel bag lay by his feet. Then my phone buzzed, loud in the silence. I slapped my hand over it, fumbling to silence the screen. But it was too late. His head snapped up. "Who's there?" I froze, pressing into the bark, barely daring to breathe. He stepped toward the trees, shovel gripped like a weapon. Leaves crackled under his boots. Closer, closer. I shut my eyes, waiting for his face to appear through the branches. And then headlights. Another car pulled up behind his. A black SUV. 2 men got out, suits gleaming under the moonlight. Dad lowered the shovel. His entire posture shifted. Relaxed. One of the men tossed him an envelope. Thick, heavy, cash. "Good work," the man said. "Same as before." "Keep it quiet." Dad smirked. "When have I ever been noisy?" They loaded the duffel bag into the SUV and drove off, taillights disappearing into the night. I stayed rooted to the tree, my pulse hammering. This wasn't just him. He wasn't working alone. There was something bigger, something organized, and my father was right in the center of it. When I finally stumbled home hours later, I crawled into bed fully dressed, shaking so hard I thought my teeth would crack, because the secret I'd uncovered wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone he worked for, and I'd just become the only person who knew. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dirt flying from his shovel, the duffel bag swallowed by the SUV, the way those men treated my father like one of their own. Morning came, but I felt no relief. I stumbled through school like a ghost. Lena kept pestering me, her brows knitted in worry. "Seriously, what's going on with you? Did your dad say something? You look like you're about to collapse." I wanted to tell her. I wanted to unload everything onto her shoulders just so I wouldn't feel so alone. But then I imagined her face in another envelope on his desk, the men in the SUV watching from the shadows, and the words caught in my throat. That afternoon, when I biked home, Dad's patrol car wasn't in the driveway. For once, I felt like I could breathe. But the moment I stepped inside, Mom was waiting for me in the hallway. Her face was pale, her eyes bloodshot. "What did you see?" I froze. "What? Don't play dumb." Her voice was shaking, but there was steel underneath. "I know you followed him last night." My stomach dropped. "How? You think I don't know my own husband's patterns? I've been surviving them longer than you." She grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. "Whatever you saw, you have to bury it. Pretend it never happened." I shook my head. "He's working with someone." Those men. Her eyes darted down the hall, toward the office door. Then she leaned in so close her breath was warm against my ear. "This is bigger than him. Bigger than all of us. If you try to fight it, you'll end up in the ground like the others." Her words hit me harder than any slap could have. "You knew," I whispered. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't deny it. She just tightened her grip. "Promise me you'll keep quiet. Promise me you'll stay safe." But how could silence ever be safe? That night, Dad came home late. His boots tracked dirt across the tile. He was humming again, that same off-key tune that made my stomach twist. He didn't look at me. Didn't need to. He knew I was watching. Hours later, when the house was quiet, I pulled out the photo he'd left on my desk, the one of me sleeping. I stared at it until my vision blurred, my hands shaking. I had 2 choices: stay quiet and drown under his secrets, or tell someone and risk everything. I don't know what pushed me over the edge. Fear, anger, maybe desperation. But I finally dialed a number I never thought I'd call. Anonymous tip line. The voice on the other end was calm, patient. "What's your emergency?" My lips trembled. The words barely came out. "My father, he's not who you think. He's killing people." For a second, I thought I'd hung up. The silence was so heavy. Then the operator spoke. "Can you give us his name?" I whispered it. Every syllable tasted like betrayal. When I hung up, my hands were ice. My chest felt hollow. I had just crossed a line I could never uncross. The next morning, 2 detectives showed up at school. I knew they were for me the second they stepped into the office. One of them called my name. Calm. Too calm. Dad was standing behind them, and he was smiling. That smile gutted me. Cold, knowing, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. The detectives asked me to come with them. Their voices were measured, almost gentle. But I couldn't stop glancing past them at my father. His uniform crisp, his badge gleaming, his face carved into something the world believed was trustworthy. I followed them down the hall, legs trembling. Students stared. Lena's eyes caught mine wide, questioning, but I couldn't explain. Not here, not now. In the small interview room at the station, one detective slid a bottle of water toward me. "You said you wanted to talk." I looked around nervously. "Where's my dad?" The other detective smiled faintly. "He's out on patrol." Don't worry. 2 words that meant nothing. My mouth was dry, my palms slick. I forced myself to speak. "He's not who you think. He follows people. He keeps photos. Tapes. I couldn't say the rest." The words stuck in my throat, sharp as glass. The detectives exchanged a glance. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "Yes, in his office. A locked drawer, cassettes. You'll see." They kept their faces calm, but I saw the flicker interest, suspicion, calculation. One of them jotted notes. The other asked more questions. Dates, names. Did I recognize anyone in the photos? I told them about Mrs. Patterson, about Lena, about the night at the quarry, the SUV, the men in suits. The room felt colder with every word. Finally, one detective leaned back. "We'll look into this." But the way he said it made my skin crawl. Like he was filing it away, not planning action. When they drove me home that afternoon, Dad's car was already in the driveway. He was waiting. Mum stood on the porch, her face pale as chalk. "Thank you, officers," Dad said warmly, shaking their hands. His smile stretched wide. "I'll handle it from here." Handle it. My blood turned to ice. When the car pulled away, he closed the door behind us. The silence inside was suffocating. He didn't yell. He didn't strike me. That would have been easier. He just walked to the office, opened the drawer, and set the brass key on the desk. "You told?" My knees nearly buckled. "You think the world will believe you?" His voice was calm, almost amused. "You think those detectives aren't already on my payroll? You think cash and favors don't erase little whispers from scared children?" Mum stood in the doorway, shaking her head. "Please don't. Quiet." His voice cut through her like a blade. He turned back to me. "Now they'll be watching, not me, you. They'll wait for you to slip, to contradict yourself, to prove you're unstable. And when you do, your word won't mean a damn thing." Tears blurred my vision. "Why are you doing this?" His smile returned, cold, patient. "Because secrets bind us tighter than blood. And now you're bound to mine forever." He picked up one of the tapes and slid it into the recorder. Static filled the room. Then a voice my mother's again, broken, begging. Mom's hands covered her face, her sobs muffled. Dad pressed stop and looked at me, his eyes unblinking. "If you ever think about running again, remember your mother's survival depends on your silence." He left the office, humming that same off-key tune, as if nothing had happened. I collapsed into the chair, shaking so hard I thought I'd shatter. Because I understood now, it wasn't just about me. He was building a cage around all of us, and every time I tried to break free, he tightened the bars. After that day, the house no longer felt like a home. It was a prison dressed in curtains and family photos. Every sound made me flinch: the creak of floorboards, the jingle of Dad's keys, even the hum of the refrigerator at night. He stopped pretending after the detectives came. No more subtle smiles or veiled threats. Now he looked at me like I was property he had to discipline, a stray dog that needed to learn obedience. Lena texted constantly. "Where are you? Why are you avoiding me? Did I do something?" Every unanswered message was a knife in my gut. But if I told her, if I let her in, she'd be swallowed by this too. And I couldn't let him have her. One night, I overheard Mom begging again. Their voices leaked through the thin walls, hers trembling, his smooth and unyielding. "She's just a child," Mum whispered. "She's old enough to learn," Dad replied. "Old enough to take her place. Take her place." The words rattled in my bones. Later, he came into my room without knocking. He sat on the edge of my bed like any normal father might, as if this was some heart-to-heart moment. "You've made mistakes," he said quietly, "but you can still prove yourself. Tomorrow night, you'll come with me." My chest locked. "Where?" He didn't answer. He just patted my leg, stood up, and left. I lay awake until dawn, every nerve screaming. When the next night came, he drove us out of town, past the gas stations, past the suburbs, into the black sprawl of back roads. The headlights cut swaths of light through the trees, shadows leaping like ghosts across the windshield. Finally, he pulled onto a dirt road and killed the engine. The silence was deafening. "Get out," he said. I obeyed, my legs unsteady as I stepped into the cold night air. He popped the trunk. A duffel bag sat inside, heavy. He unzipped it just enough for me to see ropes, duct tape, and something that glinted like steel. My stomach lurched. "No." Quiet. His hand clumped onto my shoulder. "You'll help me tonight. Or you'll wish you had." I tried to speak, to beg, but my voice was gone. He shoved the bag into my arms. Its weight nearly pulled me to the ground. We walked into the trees, the dirt crunching beneath our boots. My breath came in ragged bursts. Branches clawed at my arms. Then I saw it, headlights flickering down the road. A car slowing, pulling onto the same dirt path. Dad smiled. Right on time. The car door opened. A figure stepped out, and my blood froze. It was Lena. She looked confused, clutching her phone, her eyes flicking from me to Dad. "Hey, what's going on? Why did you text me to meet you out here?" "Texted?" My phone burned in my pocket. I hadn't. Dad had. The trap had already been set. Lena's smile faltered. "Why is your dad here?" I couldn't answer. My throat was locked. Dad's hand slid into the bag, pulling out the coil of rope. "Because tonight, loyalty is tested." He tossed the rope at my feet. "Prove yourself, or she disappears." Lena's face paled. What is happening?" Tears stung my eyes. My best friend, my only friend. And my father was demanding I break her to prove I belonged to him. I shook my head violently. "I can't." "You can," he said coldly. "You will." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "If you don't, she dies anyway. And next time, it'll be Caleb, then your mother. The choice isn't whether it happens. The choice is whether you stand beside me when it does." My whole body trembled. Lena's wide, terrified eyes locked on mine. And in that moment, I realized something. If I didn't act now, no one would ever stop him. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The rope lay at my feet, heavy with expectation, with history, with every unspoken threat that had poisoned our home. Dad's eyes bore into me. "Do it." Lena stumbled backward, her voice shaking. "This isn't funny, what is this?" Her terror snapped something inside me. I bent down slowly, picked up the rope. My fingers trembled as I wrapped it around my hands. Dad's smile widened, satisfied. But instead of turning toward Lena, I turned toward him. His eyes narrowed a split second before I lunged. A rope whipped forward, looping around his wrist. He snarled, surprised, but he was faster than I'd hoped. His other hand clamped around my throat, squeezing hard. "You ungrateful little," Lena screamed. The sound cracked through the night like glass shattering. Adrenaline surged. I twisted, kicking wildly, the rope digging into his wrist. His grip tightened on my throat, darkness creeping at the edges of my vision. "Run!" I rasped, forcing the word out to Lena. She froze, paralyzed, until I slammed my elbow into Dad's ribs. The shock loosened his hold just enough for me to gasp. "Go!" I screamed. This time, she bolted. Her footsteps pounded against the dirt road, fading into the night. Dad's fury erupted. He slammed me against a tree, the bark tearing into my back. His face hovered inches from mine, veins bulging in his neck. "You think you can betray me? You think anyone will believe you over me?" His spit hit my cheek, hot and rancid. I clawed at his hand, my nails digging into his skin. But he didn't flinch. The world tilted. My lungs screamed. Then headlights. A car barreled down the dirt road, tires skidding. Voices shouted. Doors slammed. Flashlights blinded us. "Police? Drop him now!" For one insane moment, I thought it was a trick, that his men had come to collect me. But the patches on their uniforms weren't local. State police. Real. Dad's grip faltered. He hesitated just long enough. I ripped free and collapsed to the ground, coughing, gasping, the rope still tangled in my hands. They swarmed him. Shouts, orders, the crack of handcuffs. He roared, cursed, fought like an animal caught in a trap. But they pinned him anyway. Lena's voice broke through the chaos, sobbing, frantic. She'd made it out. She'd called. She'd saved me. And just like that, it was over. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. The trial dragged on for months. The evidence from his drawer, the photos, the tapes, the envelopes of cash spilled into daylight. Reporters swarmed. Whispers filled every hallway at school. Mum testified in tears. Caleb refused to speak at all. Me? I sat there every day, staring at the man who had haunted my every waking thought. His face stayed calm, confident, even as witness after witness painted the truth. But I knew what that smile meant. He didn't see bars as a prison. He saw them as a pause. When the guilty verdict finally came, when they dragged him away in shackles, he turned to me one last time and mouthed 2 words. "Stay loyal." I still hear them when I close my eyes. I'm free, technically. He can't touch me anymore. But the shadow of his secret never left. Because when you grow up in a house built on silence and fear, survival doesn't feel like victory. It feels like carrying the rot of someone else's sins forever. That was the day I stopped recognizing who I was.